Hey, I want to talk a little bit about efficiency today. Um, people are people are obsessed with efficiency, right? I suppose I'm no different, in all fairness, but we're obsessed with efficiency, and and maybe it's just a holdover from the Industrial Revolution. But if people say, well, how can I do this more efficiently? How can I run my sprint planning more efficiently? And I'll ask them why. Why do you want to do that? And they stare at me. Why wouldn't I want to do that? Right? Of course I want to be efficient. So this is what I want to speak to. Not that efficiency is bad or we shouldn't try to be efficient. In fact, efficiency is critical, but that we should consider why we want to be efficient and if it's the thing to be focusing on at the moment. And there are three things that I want you to consider. The first thing with efficiency is uh, am I being efficient at something I should be doing? Kind of an odd thing to wonder, right? Peter Drucker, all the way back in 1963, in a Harvard Business Review article, wrote a famous quote: "There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which does not need to be done." Right? And we have this problem all the time. We can very easily fall into the trap of believing that because we do something efficiently, it is a good thing to be doing. And so there's a simple way out of that trap. If you see that we're having a conversation about doing something efficiently, just ask yourself, is this a thing I should be doing? Why do I think it's a thing that I should be doing? And that will reveal to you if your answer is, well, look how good I am at it. Well, then maybe you're just enjoying being efficient at it and it's not something that you should actually focus on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when we talk about efficiency, we often talk about efficiency in a very specific task or set of tasks. We would call this local sub-optimization, right? And that is when we are very efficient in this section of a process, but very inefficient in the entire process. A great example of that, I used to work on systems that automated the deployment of computers, right? And we got it so that we could build the system, install the software, configure it in just a couple of minutes. We spent tons of money, months and months and months of work, taking it from being a 6-hour process down to a couple of minute process. The problem is we stopped gaining value somewhere around the 2-hour mark. Why did we stop gaining value? Because that wasn't the whole process. Part of the process was that it went out to other people who would give a visual check to it from human eyes and then send out the communication to the customer. And that could take 8 hours or more. So 6 to 2, yeah, 4 hours trimmed off of what's the math on that? 14 hours. Not a bad return on investment for the time we put into it. But then as we start getting smaller and smaller and smaller, what's the difference between 30 minutes and 15 minutes? 15 minutes and 10 when you still have 8 hours on the back side of it, right? So we can chase efficiency in a very small area while being inefficient in other areas, and then we become very good at a particular task with zero value. So, first thing, should you be doing this at all? Second thing, optimize the whole, not just a small piece. And then the third thing, efficiency versus effectiveness, right? I want you to imagine, we're going to create kind of a false spectrum here for a moment, but imagine on this side I have the most efficient process I could possibly have. On this side, I have the most effective process that I could possibly have. Right? And for most of our organizations, there is a mark somewhere on these lines. There's a mark where if I am not at least this efficient, it will cost too much money to do what I'm doing, and it's not sustainable. There is a mark where if I'm not at least as effective, I won't be competitive in the market. So I need to meet both of those marks. Now, what's the relationship between efficiency and effectiveness? I'm going to use my microphone cable to demonstrate. Now, let's say we're right here. I'm not very efficient. I'm not very effective, right? There's no real tension between the two. Right? As I go out, I reach a point where to gain one direction, I have to pull back on the other direction. So let's talk about how do I find this point? Well, if I move towards a more effective way of working first, where was the line was around here. So I bring my effectiveness out to here. Now notice I still have slack. So once I have this effectiveness, I can start becoming more efficient. And eventually I'm going to hit this point. Now at this point, if I want to become more efficient, I start losing effectiveness. I don't want that, right? So as soon as I hit this point, there we go. That's my optimal place for both effectiveness and efficiency. Now why don't I go the other way? Why don't I start with efficiency first? Well, part of the problem is that we are genetically hardwired for that to be problematic. We are genetically hardwired to be loss averse. What is efficiency? It's a reduction of loss. It's a reduction of cost. So the further I go, the better I feel. I want to go further here. It's hard for me to be objective about it. It's not impossible. I want to be clear not to overstate this. It's not impossible. But it is far easier for me to be objective about the effectiveness side. This is how effective we need to be. Great. So if I move this out first, then this will go to where it naturally stops. The tension holds it in equilibrium, right? Whereas if I go the other way, I can, but I'm fighting my genetics to do it. So what about this length here? Is this fixed? Can't we do anything about this? We absolutely can, right? There are companies that extend this line so they can be more efficient and more effective at the same time. This is what process improvement is, right? So when we talk about process improvement, a lot of times people look at process improvement as how do I become more efficient? It's not. Process improvement is how do I extend this? How do I allow myself to extend the distance, right, between effectiveness and efficiency on that line so I can get further and further out without one pulling on the other. And that's what our focus should be on in process improvement. So just to recap, when we talk about efficiency, nothing wrong with it, right? It is very, very, very important, but make sure you're not using efficiency as a way to determine whether or not something is worth doing. When you look at efficiency, look at efficiency of the whole process, not simply a small piece of it. And consider effectiveness and efficiency together. And my recommendation again would be focus on getting to the effectiveness you need first, then get the most efficiency you can before the efficiency starts dragging your effectiveness down. And that's your sweet spot. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your Halloween.